Hello, welcome to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. I am Teen Zekas, and I am so excited for this episode. I'm going to turn it over to my lovely co host to introduce our topic today.
Hey, I'm Ilika Follette, and I'm really excited about today too, because today we are talking about quit the damn job. Okay, so what does that mean, right? Basically, you've been in a role where you were just maybe you just started a few months ago, and you're like, this just doesn't feel right. Like something in
Yep.
my spirit, something in my gut. Every time I walk in this place, I feel like, oh, I almost said the F word, but I feel like, dang, why am I here? Like,
Yep.
I do not want to be here. And
Yep.
every day, maybe even crying in your car. I got a story about crying in the car, but I
Mm.
want to start really quickly with a story that I had a woman on my YouTube channel today going live. Her name's Lori McDowell, and she was talking about a story about how she lost her job, right? So I'm going to tell her story really quickly, right? And she would be okay with me sharing it with you. So she had a weekend session, weekend like company wide meeting, right? But it was only for not company wide, it was a meeting for just like the higher ups, right? So
Okay.
she was going to the meeting and she was actually supposed to be speaking on day 2 of this event, right? So she drives to the event. It's 4 hours from her house. So mind you, she has to drive up there, have a hotel, all of these things. She drives up 4 hours. When she gets to the hotel, it's like, she goes check in. They're like, oh, you don't have a room. It was canceled. And she's like, what? My room was canceled. So she's like, okay.
What?
So she's like, maybe it was probably some sort of misunderstanding, whatever. I'm fine with it. She goes to the meeting, right? The first kind of introduction, how they do the initial meeting or whatever
Mm-hmm.
to launch things and kick things off. She walks in there and everyone's sitting around the table. And they're like, Lori, we're going to have to let you go. And she's like, wait, what? My first thought is when
Are
she's
you
talking,
serious?
they
In
have
that like intro meeting?
in the intro meeting, she was speaking the next day. And it's like, there's no way she could have done anything to get her fired between the time she left her house to the time of that
Right.
intro meeting. Therefore, they knew before she left her house.
Right.
They knew it was like 4 hours to fire her.
They couldn't have sent an email or called her. Instead, they did have the foresight to cancel her room. They did that.
Exactly.
They had the time to do that in advance.
Right.
Oh my
But they
goodness.
couldn't call her or Zoom. Like
Mhm.
we have ways that you can, if you want to do it face to face, we have face to face options. There's Zoom,
Yep.
there's FaceTime, there's, what, Microsoft Teams. They're like, we
Mhm.
could go on and on. Google Meets, right? They could have connected with her
No,
and they
instead, plan your trip, prep your talk, do all that stuff, drive the 4 hours,
decided,
but in the meantime, we'll be making sure we cancel your room because we don't wanna miss the cancellation and have to
right,
pay the fee.
exactly.
Mm.
That's crazy. So the point is, if they clearly didn't care, right?
Mhm.
And so it just shows that two things. Number one, someone else got to be essentially have power over what she did in that moment, over what happened to her,
Yep.
right? And number two, it shows that they didn't care. Like they
Right.
didn't care enough to give her the courtesy, and she was like a senior director level. They wouldn't didn't give her the courtesy to be able to call her and say, "Hey,
Mm.
you know what? It's not something's happened. Things aren't going to work out. Don't even come today."
Right,
Right?
maybe instead of calling the hotel to cancel, you coulda called her.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and you know what? I'm sure 100% of our listeners know somebody who's
Mhm.
had a horrible firing or layoff story where the company is just so careless
Right.
and does it in a way that, you know,
Mhm.
they do not care.
Exactly. And I want to give it to Lori because what she was able to do is in her 4 hour drive back home, she she decided to like shift, change, and do something different, right? And she actually
Mm,
created a whole company called Reimagine You. Lori was 59 years old when she decided to do this. And she was like, you know what?
amazing.
I am not going to allow someone else to do this to me again.
Mhm,
And she shifted because she already had those things that she wanted to do, but
mhm.
wasn't doing them because she had the secure job.
Oh, I love that. Well, I
Mhm.
would love to talk more about that, and
Yeah.
maybe she'd even wanna be a guest sometime, but
Mhm.
the the reason we wanted to start with that story is just to give that framing of, we always spend so much energy being loyal to the company. "Oh, I wouldn't wanna leave in the middle of this project," or
Right.
"So and so might have to take over my duties if I
Mhm.
leave." They are not doing that loyalty to you,
At all.
so you do not need to offer the same and more to them. That's
Exactly.
kinda where we're starting things, right? Is that if these companies can do something that crazy, then you do not need to worry about, "Oh, well, maybe I gotta finish Q2 or maybe I got" No, you gotta do you. This is an especially if you're an at will, right? They can
Ooh,
fire you on a Tuesday doing whatever. You
right.
can leave when you need to leave.
Mhm.
So that's the kind of the initial framing, but, one thing I know that a lot of my clients will express concern about is, "Oh, I've only been at this company for 6 months," or, "I don't know what it's gonna look like if I leave
Mhm.
this job." If your mental well-being, if your physical well-being is at risk, I don't care what your resume is gonna look like.
Right. Or
You
if
know
your money is at risk, like,
Mhm.
because sometimes there's another opportunity and people feel like they can't leave this
Oh,
job because they only been
oh,
there 6
if
months.
there's another opportunity, leave today. Put in your
Right,
notice today. If you have
right.
something else lined up that's better, put in your
Mhm,
notice today. I don't care.
mhm.
And the reason I left the other role is that something better came along.
Exactly.
If so when you have to explain, "Oh, I wasn't here," whatever, well, this amazing opportunity came up, and I just couldn't pass it up.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wanna talk about this whole, I gotta stay at least 2 years or whatever. Let me tell you, do you know how long I was a full-time teacher in my own classroom?
How long?
6 school days.
Oh, no, you did not say that.
I am
That's
I
6.
am telling you, I so in that first week of school, I lost 7 pounds in 5 days. I was having panic attacks and vomiting. I mean, it was bad. It was a bad situation. I would be driving to work and think like, "Oh, if I hit this median, I could go to the hospital instead of school."
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
that is not that's not a place you need to be going. And so, that first week I was like, "Okay, I had a 3-day weekend, it was Labor Day, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna revamp, I'm gonna change up the setup of my classroom and do all these things, I have all these strategies, it's gonna be different." And when I got back to school on I guess Tuesday then, I threw up twice before first period, and I was like, "I'm out.
Oof.
That's it. That's it, I'm out." And you know what? I was fine. I wasn't fine immediately, but I made the pivot, I did the other things, and now I'm doing work that doesn't make me dread going. Doesn't I don't prefer the hospital to my job. And that's not even the shortest job I've ever had. I once had a job for 3 days.
You know what? It
I
is what it is.
this was, like, right after college, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to teach, and I was like, "Oh, what age group is good? I'm gonna be a teacher's assistant in a preschool to see if that's the age group for me." You know, it takes 3 seconds to figure that out, right? I mean, I figured out on day 1 that this
Mhm.
was not the place for me, but also the way things were set up, the teacher was not giving me any grace during onboarding. It was a Montessori school, so, like, a lot of the different policies were different than what I was used to, and instead of explaining them to me, they'd be like, "What are you do you can't do that. What are you doing? That's ridiculous." And
Yeah.
she yelled at me in front of the kids, and
Oh,
I was
no.
like, "I'm
Mm-mm.
done." That was
I'd have
it.
walked out right then. She'd have
That
yelled
I
out the
that was it. That was my last day.
That's when you walked out.
That was my last day. So I went to I guess, the principal, and I explained what was going on and, that I'd be leaving, and, um, it's funny, so when I was hired, they hadn't been able to reach one of my referrals, and so it wasn't until after I'd already left that my referral got back to them, and they still talked for half an hour about how great I am. Like, you can leave a place well
Mhm.
without, you know, "Oh, I stayed the 2 years," or whatever the
Right.
minimum thing is. You gotta decide, "Okay, which are the bridges I'm willing to, maybe not burn, but leave behind? Which are the relationships I need to make sure I maintain?
Yeah. Mhm.
And, and what's best for me?" and that situation was not best for me, and I peaced out. And that one I didn't even put on my resume, right? I'm not gonna put 3 days on my resume.
Right.
But if you do have a 6-month something on your resume, you can tell a story about,
Mhm.
"Oh, I went there for this opportunity, um, but, such and such changed in the company and it was time to go, or this other opportunity came up and I wanted to pursue that." Like, you can tell a story about those things. Worry about that story after. You gotta
Mhm.
go. If you gotta go, please go. That's my
Exactly.
my
No,
2 cents on the matter.
I absolutely agree because that's the thing. We sit into this in this space where we truly believe that, you know, um, if I only have, 6 months on my resume, or if I have a gap, right? Because
Mhm,
sometimes you don't put that role on there, right? Maybe things were
mhm.
so rough in that 3 month or 6 month role that you don't even want to put it on your resume.
Right.
And so now you're like, well, then my resume is going to have a gap for 3 months and I don't know what to do. And what if this happens? And it's like,
Mhm.
you know what? So many people have gaps in their resume. There's different reasons to have gaps in your resume,
Yeah.
right? It could literally be, I took a break. I had a kid. I did,
Mhm.
like there's so many
Yeah,
things,
I
right?
decided to take some time to
Yeah.
work on my hobbies. Right? Like, I
Exactly.
don't
I
why
started a business. I was consulting, and it would
Mhm.
look stupid to put 4 different companies on here for those 4 months that I did it,
Right.
so it just made sense to just show other things.
And you can even write whatever that story you're telling is, you could write that on the resume,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
During these 6 months, I was on a sabbatical
Yep. Mhm.
or yeah, whatever. I
Right.
I saw one person, I think it was a TikTok or something, they said, if there's a short stint on your resume and they ask why you left that job, you say, that you signed
NDA.
an NDA, and they can't ask any more questions.
Right. That's hilarious
Right?
and
Like,
so
"Oh, I'd
true.
love to talk more about it, but I signed an NDA."
Yeah, so I can't. That is so true.
That
You
cracked me
can
up.
totally do that. And that's the thing. It's like we sit in this space, and I think that actually goes into the imposter syndrome idea and the things that we've talked about before, where
Mhm.
it's like, oh my goodness, but they're going to think this about me. Now I'm
Right.
not good enough. I was only at a job for this long,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Almost as if you can't keep it together because you were at a job for only 6 months. You know
Right.
what? Just like you said, Teen, you said earlier that when something's not right for you. In the
Yep.
first few days,
You
if not
can
the first
feel
few
it in
weeks.
your body.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And you begin to react. And
Mhm.
so if that is the case, like something has to give before your health gives or before your mental gives or before,
Right.
so like I remember when I like it was my first job out of college. I was working at a pretty big company. And when I first got there, it felt amazing. I loved it because I get really excited about stuff. So I really liked it. I liked the
Yeah.
people, everything seemed great. And then all of a sudden, it was like there was a shift in the culture. I think some of the leadership
Mhm.
changed or something. The culture shifted, and it was about, I think I was about maybe 8 months in, right? And things just shifted so
Yeah.
badly. And I remember from like month 8 on, I would drive to work and I would sit in my car for like 15 minutes sobbing, just
Mm.
crying, just angry, just like, oh my gosh, or like listening to Kirk Franklin or something to try and hype myself up to walk in, right?
Right, right.
Like all of these things
Mhm.
because it was just awful. I hated it there.
And
And
when
what's crazy is I didn't leave. I didn't quit. I
right.
waited for them to have layoffs or something and then jump
Mhm.
into that because of my fear of
Yep.
what if I quit? What
Mhm.
what if I can't get another job or what happens next or what do I do next?
Yeah.
Let me tell y'all this. So I actually ended up getting laid off because they had major layoffs. Like it was like 30% of the company was laid off, right? And
Wow.
so I was one of them. I got laid off. It was my first year out of college, right?
Mhm.
And within like a month, I'd had another position that I ended up staying at for like 14 years. Like literally within a month. I was so scared because I bought a car the day before.
Right.
Like
Right.
all of these things. I was so afraid that I
Mhm.
wasn't going to be able to handle things or manage things
Yeah.
that I stayed
And
until
imagine
I
if
had
they didn't lay you off. How long would you have stayed crying every day?
time.
I mean,
Exactly.
if you think about the net gain of leaving versus the net loss of
Mhm.
staying, of what
Exactly.
you're doing to yourself every day that you stay in a role that you know is wrong for you, in a place
Mhm.
that you know does not value you, in a place where you have nowhere to grow.
Mhm.
All of these reasons that there could be to leave,
Yeah,
leave. And
exactly.
and yes, I mean, obviously, if you got a mortgage, you try to line something up, right? You don't have to
Mhm.
just the
Right.
day you decide you don't like it, flip a table and you're out, right? But
I'm out of here.
make an exit plan, but make that plan and don't have that plan be, well, after 2 years,
Mhm.
I'm gonna start looking.
Right.
No, that plan
Exactly.
needs to be, Imma start looking right now, and as
Right now.
soon as I have something, I am giving my notice.
Yep. Because the thing is, if you it could take 2 years to find something, right? For the person
Right,
who
so why
feels
are you
like they
gonna
have to
wait
have
the 2 years before you
something.
start?
Exactly. Or
Mm,
you could find something immediately, and if you find something immediately, that next role could be a role that lasts for 5 years. And when you've been
right,
somewhere for 5 years, guess what? No one cares about the 6-month blip. No
exactly,
one cares,
exactly.
right? When you've been at this next company for
Yep,
sometime even 2 years, no one
mhm.
cares about a 6-month hiatus.
Yeah. I one time had an interview where they went through all of my jobs and asked why I left each one. And you know what? That to me was the interview where I decided I didn't wanna work for them.
Right,
The
exactly.
first one, he was asking about my developer roles, and I may have mentioned this on another episode. The reason I left my first developer role is because the head of HR licked my face. Maybe I haven't mentioned that in the future, judging by your face. Then I clearly have not mentioned that before.
Oh my gosh.
So we're in this interview, and he's like, "Oh, why did you leave this place?" And I said that, and he's like, "Huh, okay." And then he continued to ask me why I left every single job, and I'm like, "Dude, how was that not an indicator to you that, like, it's none of your business why I left this job?" And maybe the
Right.
question can be, "How will I contribute in the current job?" Right? And so to me, I mean, again, I as a software engineer, I was at 4 companies in my first 5 years.
Mhm.
And that is the only time an interviewer has asked me why I left each job. And to me, that was enough to be like, "Screw you. I'm
Yeah,
not interested in this role."
right, exactly.
So, that kind of stuff, and again, it's that, as you said, that imposter syndrome, they're gonna think this, they're gonna think that. You tell them what to think.
Mhm.
You get to paint the story. You get
Yeah,
paint the story. You get to tell the story of, here's what I was doing in this time. Here's why I'm moving on to the next thing. Here's what I'm really excited to do next.
exactly.
You know?
You get to create the paint the picture that you want.
Mhm.
Create the situation because that's the thing. You have the power. When you're in the interview or when you are, into each role,
Mhm.
you gotta own the role as you having the power.
You're interviewing them
Exactly.
because
Mhm.
we all know as Black women,
Yep.
90 something percent. I don't wanna say 99 because that'd be depressing, but at least 90% of these companies do not deserve us. They're
Right.
not going to serve us. They're not going to treat us how we need to be treated.
Mhm.
They're not going to, provide us the opportunities for growth that we need.
Mhm.
So, it's our job in these interview processes to be interviewing them. We're trying to
Right.
figure out, are you gonna be better than this place that I'm trying to leave?
Exactly.
Right?
Are you
I
a
don't
part
care
of
that
that
I've been
team?
there 6 months. Are you gonna be better in the next 6 months
Right.
so that I can stay? Like, it's on them to keep you, to retain you.
Exactly. It is up to them, and that's the thing, you get to decide, right? You get to have that power and decide. Every interview is an opportunity for you to decide whether you
Mhm.
wanna work for this company or not. And
Exactly.
so when you're walking in that interview afraid about that 6-month blip because you quit the job, right?
Mhm.
Um, Now what you're doing is you're giving that the interviewer the power.
Yep.
They don't have the power. They can't just decide they're gonna give you an offer and you automatically take it, right? You have the power to
Right.
own. You can decide if you wanna take that position or not.
Yep.
And so you're trying to understand in that interview, do they have the right culture for you? Because
Mhm.
clearly the company that you were at for 6 months and decided, "Oh my gosh, this ain't it," didn't have the culture, right?
Right, right,
They
and
didn't.
so what lessons are we taking from that? What questions are we asking now that we've had that experience to
Mhm.
make sure the next one won't be the same old stuff? I again, I was about to do some more cussing. Um, And, for me, it wasn't until that fourth and company. I
Mhm.
said I was at 4 companies in 5 years. It wasn't until that 4th company that in the interview process, I asked to speak with a Black engineer and a woman engineer. And the
Mm.
other 3 companies I had worked at would never have been able to supply those things, right?
Wow.
And it was in those conversations where, they weren't even in the hiring discussion. They were just having that meeting with me because I'd requested it. So the stakes were so low, and I
Mhm.
was able to ask real questions about what it's like to be there. And that's when I learned. So this was during the pandemic, where I was like so grateful during George Floyd that I did not have to go into the office and look at these people.
Mhm.
And then the Black engineer I talked to at this other company was like, "Oh, it's been really hard that we've been out of the office because I really miss going in and to see the other Black people, the Black community, and how tight we are." And I'm like, "Oh, that's different."
Right.
That's a whole different experience, right? And so, as you move through different roles, you start to learn, well, what are the questions I need to be asking to
Mhm.
see if the next company is going to meet my standards?
Exactly.
That's,
Mhm.
I mean, that's what it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is like when we're looking at quit the damn job, right?
Mhm.
Really looking at, if this ain't for you, if this place is not for you, if it's not giving you what you need, maybe you didn't know during that interview process that you could ask these questions, or that you were
Mhm.
interviewing them because you hadn't learned yet that you actually have the
Right.
power.
Right. It's
And
not about, "Oh, I should have done this. I should have
yeah,
done that." No,
right.
now I know, and here's how
Exactly.
Imma change the next here's how I'm
Yep,
gonna move differently in the
exactly.
future.
And that it's cool because I didn't know, I'm not in the space that I want to be in this position at this company. And so peace, I'm out.
Yep.
Right? There's always more opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and when we say quit the damn job, just like Teen said earlier, it's not just throwing tables, right? Immediately.
Even
It's
though we'd all love to
right. We
flip that
want to do
table.
that. It's being set up like, okay, I know I need to leave this place, right? I'm sick walking into this office, and maybe I don't have money saved up to just throw the table and hit the road, right?
Mhm.
Maybe I do need to create a plan. So create that plan, right? Create a plan that
And start
incorporates
acting on
saving.
that plan.
Exactly. Incorporates saving the money that you're going to
Mhm.
need, incorporates, ensuring your resume is up to date, maybe getting a certification if you need it, whatever it is to get that next opportunity. And
Mhm.
also begin, submitting your resume, networking, talking to
Yep.
people, getting opportunity, getting in front of the right people who can bring you into that next role.
Absolutely. Right. If you don't let people know you're looking, I mean, obviously it can be hard if it needs to be secret.
Right.
But in general, if when you let people know what you're looking for, then they're better able to
Mhm.
say, "Oh, yeah, actually, you know what? I know somebody at this kind of company who's
Exactly.
looking for whatever," and you would never have known that if you hadn't
Mhm.
put out there. So at least to the people you can trust,
Yeah.
let
Let
them
'em
know what you're looking for.
Yeah. And guess what? I got to say this before we even close, is that even if your current company sees that you have your resume out there or are looking at other roles, and someone comes and asks you, you say, "Hey, I've always got to be open to opportunities,
Yep.
like
Oh, yeah.
this is a world where we're flexible. We want to see what's
Mhm.
out there. And if I'm not getting what I need here, I'm not saying that I'm not, right? But let's say that I'm not getting what I need
Mhm.
here. I need to ensure that my name is out there for better opportunities.
Yeah.
That's just life.
Right.
Like
You can always be interviewing. And
exactly.
you can let people know, right, this has no bearing on, what's happening in this current role
Mhm.
necessarily,
Yeah.
but I'm always out there, I'm always trying to hone my skills, I'm always trying to see what opportunities are out there.
Exactly. Yep. Because this isn't 1949 where people stayed at a job for 30 years and got a
Mhm.
pension and lived their best lives. That's
Yep.
I don't know if that was happening in 1949, but I know it was happening. I know it was definitely happening in like the 90s, in
Yep.
the,
Yep.
in the 80s, right? People stayed at a company forever
Mhm.
and got a great pension. They lived amazingly afterwards,
Right.
right? That's not today.
Right. Well, and now when you are an excellent Black woman contributing to your company, it is on them to keep you. So
Exactly.
again, like, they should
Mm,
know that you're out there, and that if a better opportunity comes along, you might be talking to somebody about it. but they should be doing what they can to make sure they're promoting you. They're giving you the
Mhm.
raises you need. They're giving you the opportunities for growth you need because it is their job to retain you.
Exactly. Ooh, I love that. I almost want you to say it again. It is on them to keep you, like
Exactly. Exactly. And if they're not living up to that, and if they're intimidated that you have your resume out there, well,
mhm, right. They should
time
be
to go.
offering you another, they should be looking at a succession plan for you. And if they're not, that's on them, right?
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
you can hit the road. So
Oh,
I
I love it.
definitely this has been a great conversation. We love episodes like this where we're able to kind of talk through, and we can't just roll over that whole the HR person licked your face thing, team. So we got we got to get back
We're
into
gonna
that
have to have another
conversation.
episode
Keep on
about
going, because that's the craziest thing I ever heard. I almost fainted when you said that. I was like, "What? Did she say she licked her face?"
oh my
I
word.
don't know. The person licked her face. That's
Correct.
crazy.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
we got
we could do an episode about I don't even know what the topic would be, but
craziest reasons I
something
left
where
the
we
job or craziest reasons I didn't take a
explain.
job.
Yeah.
Because
Mm,
we all got some stories like that. Yes.
absolutely.
Right.
Well,
So
thank
stay
you
tuned
all
if y'all wanna hear why
for
wait, stay
joining us. Oh,
yes.
sorry.
So stay tuned if y'all wanna hear, why the person licked T's face or what happened when that I just like that's crazy.
Oh,
Okay.
and let us know in the comments if you've ever quit a job that was, sooner than maybe you wanted to and how it went, how it worked out, right? We want to hear your stories and share inspiration for others, if you know you need to get out of a job, then, hopefully there's some comments in there that are inspiring to you to say, "Okay, I left this job and here's the amazing thing I found next." Right? We'd love to hear from you and, continue to follow wherever you're listening, or if you're on YouTube, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can get more episodes just like this one. And in the meantime, if you're thinking about quitting that job, make the plan, quit the
Mhm.
damn job.
That's right. Alright. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.